Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Babylon 5 Retrospective Show. I am your host, Science Fiction Snob, and my co host today and always is Cam. Say hello, Cam.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, look at that. See, Cam? RTBS likes the intro. Somebody
Hmm,
likes it. Thanks.
right
Appreciate
on.
that. Okay, so we're gonna jump right into it. Before we do, though, two small administration points. Last show I talked about the no spoiler rules and that sort of thing. I mean, those rules are for the panelists only, guys. You guys can say what you want in the chat. If you do a big spoilery thing, I might not you know uh, focus on your comment and bring it up on the show to sort of preserve that. But everyone can say what they want. We're just trying to keep away from spoilers because we want to let it grow organically. Now, that's not to say that we might not say, hey, this is important, or see this thing happening that might have some effect later on, something like that. But we're going to try to keep away from big spoilers. For me, something like saying something like, "Oh, hey, in the next episode, the all the three of the principles are going to change." That's not really a spoiler. But if you were to say to me that in season 3, Jakar is going to be the God Emperor of the universe and destroy all of Babylon 5, that might be a bit of a spoiler. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I don't know if that happens or not. Hopefully I didn't inadvertently say something there that is actually going to happen. Cam might know. If so, pretend I didn't say that. But that's the kind of thing we're looking for. Snuggy Jr. is right. Spoilers for a 30-year-old show. Yeah, I know it's kind of, yeah. But we're trying to have people discover it. And the other point is that if you can't tell, I am a little bit sick today. I wasn't so bad after the last show, but then it just something hit, and I spent yesterday all day sleeping. Well, if you count, tossing and turning for 2 hours, getting up, taking drugs, drinking water, and rinsing and repeating. If you call that sleeping, I did that for like the whole day yesterday. So yeah, it's a little bit. I'm a little under the weather. I'm gonna let the other panelists do most of the talking. Yeah. Thanks everybody in the chat for coming out. Susan
Yeah, we
says
got
we got 11 people. That's good.
got a few new
Uh,
names too.
New names. Let's just go through. I see. Weatherman's RTBS. Um, who else is here? Uh, DP's here, of course. Yeah. Snuggy Jr. I don't think we've seen Snuggy Jr. before.
Snuggy
Jeanette.
Jr. is a friend of mine from the comics world.
Oh, right on. Jeanette Buffington. That's a new name? Yeah.
Yeah, welcome, Jeanette.
Good to see you guys. Yeah. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming out. Oh, Michael's here too. Yeah. Michael, good to see you as well. Yeah, like and subscribe. The first show is doing pretty well. We got some new subs, some more people coming in. People seem to be liking it. All right, well, let's bring in Death Angel Shadow.
Hey guys,
Welcome.
how are
And
you
yes,
doing?
Cam has friends. He keeps
Cam
telling
has
me RTBS, you are one of them. So maybe he's lying.
That's not true. Huh?
Yeah.
Man, what a
All
great
right.
episode, huh? I thought it was pretty good.
What, this one or the last one?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. Last week we did. Last episode we did the what are they called? The trivia. So what we're
Yeah.
gonna do is we're going to do the trivia answers for this. We're gonna do the trivia answers at the beginning of the show, and then for the last show, and then we'll do at the end of this show. We'll do the new questions for this show.
Yeah,
If
and
that makes sense.
if you would, it would be very helpful and get yourself on record if you can answer the trivia questions in the comments for the video.
Yeah, put them in for the show, and then yeah, and then we'd appreciate that. Put them in, get in there. Okay, are we ready? Here we go. Okay, so the questions were. Let me see here.
Can you bring them up?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring them up. Got the right. I'm just making sure. All right, here we go. Okay, these are the questions from last episode. So I'll just go real quick. Who did the voiceover for the opening credits in the episode? Who said the following quote? If it makes you feel better, I could send them a fruit basket. Sooner or later, everyone comes to Babylon 5. Who gave Sinclair information on the Vorlon? What Earth animal does Londo compare the Centauri Republic to in the episode? And the last one, you can't read it because of my things there. I don't know how to get rid of that. Which character only seen in the pilot episode is mentioned again in the fifth season episode? So, who wants to give? Who did the first quote?
Well, do you want the character or do you want the?
Matter.
Well, I mean,
Voiceover.
I think I touched on it. In fact, I outright mentioned it.
Go ahead, blurt it out.
Blurt it out.
Yeah, it was Londo.
Londo did the voiceover in the opening credits. I think that's correct. If it makes you feel any better, could I send them a fruit basket? Who said that?
Cam? Oh,
no, I'm not answering.
You're not answering?
I'm letting the chat answer.
Oh. Okay, chat, do you know?
RTBS says Garibaldi.
No, it wasn't Garibaldi.
Mm-hmm.
It was Takashima.
It was.
Yeah.
There you go.
I knew the answer.
Okay, next.
Next question. Who gave the following quote? Sooner or later, everyone comes to Babylon 5. Anybody? No?
Nope.
Lita. Alexander.
Did she?
And what's the next one?
Who gave Sinclair information on the Vorlons?
Oh, that's pretty easy.
Oh, Cam's got to answer that one.
Yeah, Dylan.
Dylan did that. Yeah, it's pretty. We even talked about that. What Earth animal does Londo compare the Centauri Republic to in the episode? I saw a couple people said sharks, not before, but that's wrong.
Lion.
It's not sharks.
Well,
No.
actually, he said they used to be sharks.
He said the things that ride on sharks.
Oh, yeah.
Scavengers on the sharks. Remora. That's what it was.
Remora.
No. So
That's
I mean,
right.
sharks is part of it, but not.
Yeah,
And then-
yeah.
And then the last answer is anybody know? It's Cam. You should know who the last one is.
Nope, no idea.
You don't? No idea.
Nope.
It is the doctor.
There you go.
So
Dr.
there's your
Kyle?
answers right there
Dr. Kyle.
Oh.
on the side there. Dr. Ben Kyle. Apparently, I don't know this. I haven't seen that far. It was the doctor.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah, he is mentioned actually, and I thought he's mentioned at another point in time too, but I don't know.
So good job of everybody. If you got 5 out of 5 or 6 out of 5, whatever. Okay.
Test. Poor Weatherman. He doesn't take tests.
So what did you guys think of? Let's go back to this episode. What do you guys think of this episode?
Wait a minute. You're talking. We're going into episode 1.
Yeah, why not? You ready?
Okay, let's
We're
read
good.
the synopsis. Let's stick to the plan here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
What do you-
episode 1, Midnight on the Firing Line, written by J. Michael Straczynski, again, which most are, and the original air date is January 26, 1994. So this is almost a year after the pilot episode. And the synopsis, just to get us launched here, is when the Narn attack a Centauri colony, Londo and Jakar nearly come to blows several times. Meanwhile, the Raiders are attacking transport ships near the station. So, here we go.
All right. And there's actually some interesting things. Of course, being the first episode, we get introduced to several new characters in this one. I don't know if you'd call them. I guess you could call them replacements.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what they are.
Pretty much replacements.
Well,
But-
okay. So first off, we have a new second in command.
Right.
Lieutenant Commander Ivanova shows up in this episode,
Yeah.
and
Veer.
Veer, who is Londo's ambassadorial assistant, his aide.
Right. And then Talia.
Right, the new telepath comes
Yeah.
in.
Those are the three that I know of that I made notes of.
So the episode starts out with a kind of a teaser where you've got it shows a Centauri colony. So we get a little bit of background here and you see basically a couple Centauri officials on a space station, and then warp gate or hyperspace gate opens, and in come attacking ships by an unknown force. So they try to send out distress signals and such, and attack takes place on their colony.
Yeah, Ragesh 3.
Yep.
It's the Centauri agriculture colony. So.
Yep. So, well, hey, Death Angel Shadow. I heard that you have some extensive notes on this.
Oh man, did I kill myself with this one?
You probably have some thoughts here, right?
4 pages worth?
Yeah.
It's almost a play-by-play. Yeah, that happened at 1000 hours, by the way, Earth Standard Time. I guess Universal Time doesn't fit in the future because it's Earth time.
Right.
And
So
go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, so the A story basically is, the fact that there's this attack on the Centauri,
Ragesh, yeah, 3.
a colony, and Londo dealing with this. So this is a big deal. It's a surprise attack. Londo, well, Veer, his assistant, shows up to report this to him, as Garibaldi and Londo were having a back and forth conversation. There's a lot in the first season, as I recall, with Garibaldi and Londo. It's kind of a, I don't know if you want to say an odd couple, but they have this
friendly adversarial or
yeah,
friendly rivalry or something like that. Yeah.
right. And there's a little bit of information is revealed here about how the Centauri encountered Earth at first. There's just a few tidbits they say there. And
just before you go on, Ken, I'm going to bring Jason in.
Okay.
Oh. All right, Jason, come on in.
Hey, how's it going?
All right, welcome. We were just talking about Garibaldi and Londo. Go ahead.
And again, feel free to jump in anytime, you guys. But so Garibaldi was revealing a little bit of information about how the Centauri kind of were scamming Earth. They tried to sell him on the fact that the Earth was a lost Centauri colony, and Londo's playing it off, kind of. So it's kind of this humorous back and forth they have between each other, but not a lot of acrimony between them. But it's telling you, kind of that the Centauri are maybe a little sneaky, a little nefarious, and of course that is in it while they're in decline, and Garibaldi talks about that they presented themselves as this massive empire, and they had already been in decline for about 100 years.
Yeah, they're both. I would say Jakar and Londo are both duplicitous in their own ways, but they're very different ways.
Well, you could argue that almost everyone is duplicitous.
True. I mean, in this episode especially.
Yeah,
even Sinclair.
Yeah, this is diplomacy. That's kind of the background of the show. Is you've got these factions that really aren't friends, kind of angling against each other all the time. There was
posturing, a lot of posturing.
Right, exactly. So I'm just kind of going through the summary here, and again, anybody can jump in at any time. But so they kind of throw together an impromptu meeting with Londo, Sinclair, Delenn, and Jakar. And Jakar comes in. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear this." As if he, it's the first time any of them are hearing about it. Well, we soon after discover that it's the Narn who attacked the colony, and then things get a little hot from there. So Londo. So this is kind of a Londo episode for the A story.
Yeah.
And Snob insists that we talk about the A and B storylines. And so one of the B storylines in this is with Ivanova and the new telepath. Talia.
Talia, yeah. And there's a whole throughout the whole episode. There is a lot of that where, I can cut to that. I don't know if you want to jump right to that or if you want to go through the whole attack and
let's just go where we end up, where we lead off to. Where we
Okay.
end up. That's
Well, there's throughout the episode when Talia first shows up, Susan, the lieutenant commander, is on the bridge, and Talia goes up and introduces herself. She has to report apparently to the commanding officer or whatever, check in, and she kind of gets the cold shoulder. Is that I'm almost a reserved sense of hostility from the lieutenant commander.
Yeah, Ivanova basically blows her off, and she's like, "I'm busy with other stuff." But they make
Jakar knew.
they make kind of a big deal out of it, where Talia's supposed to be reporting in because she's again the new commercial telepath. So
Right.
there's they are highly regulated.
And you get more information, a little more information about Psychor throughout this episode from conversations that is had.
This is kind of when we're introduced to Psychor, right? Like this is.
I mean, you knew they mentioned Psychor, but that was about it in the pilot. In this one, you actually learn, that she is of course a level 5 member of Psychor. It's not. I see somebody saying, "Well, Ivanova doesn't like telepaths." It's not that she doesn't like telepaths. In fact, quite the contrary. Should I go jump to the end?
Yeah. Just go.
Okay.
Run with it.
All right. So it turns out her mother was actually a telepath.
Yeah, kind of a latent telepath.
A latent telepath, and that's what. Yeah, B story, C story. And she kind of she had laid, hidden in the background and not gotten noticed for many years. I guess most of her life, because I believe she was 35 when they finally came knocking on the door.
Right.
And apparently, if you have any latent psionic abilities, you're given 3 choices. You're either going to go into the core. Sorry, you're going to get weekly drugs, or you're going to go to prison. That's your choice. And I think somebody had mentioned I think somebody called it fascist, but I don't even know if that's an accurate word for what that is.
Well, we'll get deeper into Psychor, but this is the first indication that it's like they've got some. Yeah, I mean, most people would bristle at this. It's like, wait a minute, just because they're a person that have these abilities they're born with and they aren't doing anything wrong, they're basically just adjudicated to, hey, you either have to
your choice,
right? You have to serve us. You're going to prison, or you're going to be drugged. And the idea of the drugs is to suppress their abilities so they can't misuse them.
Yeah, and that's the premise for this law, and it's apparently a law on Earth,
right.
and all Terran,
Yeah, so this is my first indication that Earth is not all sunshines and lollipops and
yep,
all that stuff.
Yeah, it's not
right.
Post-scarcity utopia of Star Trek.
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
It's very much cut.
Jason, you're a little quiet there. Maybe
Am I?
Yeah, you up your volume a little. Yeah, this is my first indication. Earth's not sunshines and lollipops. Does anybody want to comment on? Do you think Jakar know that whether the attack was coming or not? I always assumed that he did.
Oh yeah, he definitely did. Jakar definitely knew.
I think it's something they would tell him about, so he'd be prepared about.
Well,
okay, so he when he comes in initially into the meeting, he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear this, about your losses," completely ignoring the whole thing. And then when Londo finds out about it, he goes to confront Jakar, and Jakar says, "I just heard about it myself," kind of trying to still play it off. But then he kind of turns a little dark, and he's like, "Yeah, we're coming for you," kind of thing. So I would assume that he probably knew about it.
About the one thing I think that this show does really well is the whole interplay between ambassadors. Like normally you would think that that thing would be pretty boring, but the whole scheming that they do and the nitpicking that the two of them do after each other, like you've just mentioned here with the whole, yeah, no, I didn't know, but we're coming after you. Like that's just something that high level thing that you think people fighting with words would be used to doing that, sticking it into the other guy. I knew before and I'm happy that it happened to you, that kind of thing. So
Right.
Yeah, and they're starting to reveal that there's a pretty deep hatred between these two races, the Narn and the Centauri. That the Centauri had basically oppressed the Narn for I don't remember exactly how long, but a long period of time. And Jakar mentions that they basically strip mined their their planet because he was talking about how they've restored a few forests on Narn.
Right.
Um,
Right. Well, one of the things that does come out about this Regash 3 colony is it actually used to be Narn territory.
right.
Regash 3 was originally a Narn colony, and Londo's people basically have took it over and had colonized it as an agricultural colony for what 100 years, I think is what they said in the
Yeah, it was 100.
episode. 100 years they had it. So
even if Jakar didn't know that that they were going to attack the colony, there's no way he'd admit it to Londo. He would be always say, yeah, he would always try to get across. Of course I knew, because then he would be diminished. Like if you don't know what your government, if he doesn't know what his government's up to, like they're not telling him, and that sort of diminishes, how powerful he is in everybody else's eyes. So even if he doesn't know about it, he's not
Yeah.
going to admit that. He's going to say,
th-
"Of course
I
I
think-
knew. I
Yeah,
know
I think he
everything that
did
goes
know,
on.
though,
I'm,
because
I am in there."
yeah, but the way he follows up with that, when he's saying yes, of course I knew, and then coming after Londo with his criticisms and this is why we did it and why do you think we've risen up and all of that. I would think that Jakar is part of that process of whether you want to call it retaliation or revenge or just we're going to get ours back because it was originally a Narn colony. I think Jakar is going to be aware of a lot of stuff that's going on because a lot of times the ambassadors are not told everything. Of course, I mean we know that from the Hunt for Red October, where the Russian ambassador says, in my line of work, I'm usually the last to know. But I think Jakar's connected enough that he's likely right there in the thick of it,
Well,
figuring out how to get get the Narn Empire back to where it needs to be.
yeah, and Jason, you bring up an interesting point. Is that they kind of imply in the early episodes here that this is not really a choice assignment. This is kind of a backwater, and like you said, maybe these ambassadors aren't really the movers and shakers, but not really spoilery. Clearly, this is a show about these people, and things really are very important. What happens here, they'll develop that way.
right.
Um,
How's my
but
audio, by the way? Is it better?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I upped you a little bit too. It's better.
The chat's talking about a few
Yeah,
interesting points here.
I'd like to talk about what Kosh says in here. And I remember coming up, RTBS, I'll put up the other comment. He says, yeah, so here's this. Where Kosh says they are alone, they are dying people. We should let them pass. And then what I think it's Sinclair who
Sinclair
says,
yeah.
who, the Narn or the Centauri?
Yes.
And then
Yeah,
Kosh says yes.
So there are three ambassadors that talk about basically, if not genocide, then letting races be wiped out. So, by today's standards, this is very problematic. Of course, it's such a thing. But Londo talks about we should have wiped you out, while we had the chance. Jakar says we will wipe you out, and Kosh is like, let them both die. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
this is.
Londo attacked Jakar, and Jakar was sitting there eating something, and when they actually managed to get some, I believe they were crystals, and had put it on their view screen in Londo's quarters, looked at it and enhanced the image, and it became blatantly obvious it was a Narn. They were attacked by the Narns.
Right.
You know, and at that point he stormed out and physically confronted Jakar. So, you know,
Right.
that was the
That's
first
what
time we've
we're
seen them get into fisticuffs, if you will.
right, and that leads to an interesting discussion with Londo and Sinclair. Did anybody want to discuss that? Where Londo's talking about his dream?
Oh yeah, his dream is that in 20 years he's
Hmm.
he's going to die, while with his hands wrapped around, you know, somebody's throat, and
No, he's gonna
it
he's gonna be
is around
killing
him.
Jakar.
Well, it's going to be kind of a mutual thing, is the way that I picked up on it. It was like they would be
Yeah.
you know, each would be squeezing the life out of one another.
Right. Uh, well, Londo explains that his people, this is common for them, that they have these visions of their own death.
Right.
And he said that he had this dream, and the first time he saw Jakar, he's like, "That's the guy from my dream."
Yeah, he recognized that was him. So he knew that, you know, at least in his mind, that's where he was going to be going with it. You know, that he was going to be, one way or another, he was going to die. They in direct confrontation with
Hmm.
Jakar. So
Yeah, and so I'm sorry. Anybody want to say
So
anything?
that's why he goes to get the gun to shoot him, because he doesn't want to die that way.
Well, that's interesting point. Why would he go and do that if he believed that something else was going to happen? But I was just going to mention that Londo is basic. Once he finds, he's like, we need to go to war. It's like there's no other choice here. He says blood for blood. That's it. Now we also learned that Londo's nephew is the
Karn,
administrator
right?
for this colony for Ragash 3, and so he doesn't know whether he's alive or dead initially. Um, and then there's there's a scene where where they get the council together for the second time, where everyone's there, and they have kind of a classic hostage video kind of thing where they say, "Oh no, we decided to join the Narn against our corrupt government," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's Londo's nephew
No,
who's
now bear in mind, while all of these events are occurring, you've got the other plot, not the B plot, almost a second A plot, maybe a little less prominent, but with the pirates and Garibaldi going out,
right. Yeah, the Raiders are brought into play here.
right, and there was a freighter, which was an Earthship, that was actually attacked coming out of a jump point that had been attacked. Actually, I think at that point there had been already 5 that had been attacked,
Something
and
like
Right.
that, yeah.
Yeah,
and
this is sixth one.
the 6th one happened to be full of refugees. There was over 500, people on board that were refugees, men, women, and children. And so it would have been a literal bloodbath. Can we use that word? But by these pirates. Don't know who the pirates are at this point. But one thing that was pointed out is that the weaponry that was used in the attack was not your typical weaponry found by the pirates, by the raiders. It was a little heavier, so that's kind of a
A little thread thrown out there.
right. So, but again, this is all going on at the same time, and so Garibaldi's off investigating that line, and a very minor plot that I think could potentially in the future have something, but there's also a presidential election going on.
Right. Yeah. So there's actually quite a few subplots here.
Yeah, very minor at this point. Yeah,
But
Santiago is running against. He's the incumbent, and he's running against. What's her name? I got it somewhere down here on the list. At any rate, but he's the incumbent is running against somebody else, and that's kind of you'll see little blurbs where there's this news, almost like they've got TVs on here, there, in the quarters or in the casino or at the bar, that just like we would have, and there's little news blurbs going on here and there
Right. Michael brings up an interesting point in the chat, kind of a para discussion with us about the ambassadorial assistants, which in this episode we're introduced to Veer, who, like I said, is Londo's assistant. He mentions that they're basically a mechanism for having exposition from the each of the factions, because they aren't going to talk to each other most of the time in a candid way. So that's an excellent point that they do that. What did you guys think of Veer? He's you might recognize him.
Oh, yeah, well, he's very obsequious.
Right, he's kind of a nervous guy,
and very Londo's the greatest. Londo's a very boisterous, outgoing. Veer is very. Yes, yeah, I know you're the great ambassador. You're the you're whatever you want, but sir, don't you think we should do, and why would they do that to us? It's just kind of a weird.
I like all of the assistants. I think they all reflect something about their society that they come from, and how they, treat people, and they show us something else about that society, right? Like, Veer is obsequious because that's what it's like. It reflects upon the society that Londo was from.
Kowtows to Londo.
And then when we meet Jakar's assistant, she's tough and kind of like stands up, and that gives you that idea of between them. And Deland's assistant is kind of the whole space elves thing, the philosophical aspect, the kind of the Vulcan-esque type thing of their race. So they all reflect. I think they all specifically reflect of their race.
But we haven't had
the funny thing too.
No, we haven't.
You have the contrast between Londo and Veer, especially where he's really loud and outgoing, and Veer is internalizing everything. But the whole nervous, yes sir, whatever you say sir type stuff actually came out of Stephen First's audition, because everybody was auditioning for Veer, and he had read the script, the physical description of the character, as he goes into the bathroom to fix his hair so he would look more like the character, and whatever mishap or whatever I guess he had gotten soap or water or something all over himself, and he just stumbling and fumbling over everything, and he came in and was essentially doing the character, and as soon as he walked in and was talking to him, they're all like, "That's Veer.
That's him. Yeah.
That's him," and they cast him on the spot. And yeah, he was in Animal House, but he was also in St. Elsewhere, which is where I knew him from before he was in here. I was like, "Oh, I know this guy. He was in St. Elsewhere."
Well, and that's an interesting point too. A lot of the people in this have been in a lot of things. When Billy Mooney comes in, if you start to look at his resume, it goes back, very extensively. So
to black and white era.
Literally. Zone. Right, and so a lot of experienced actors end up on the show. So it's
and a lot of them that you will recognize, especially. Some of them from some very beloved sci-fi shows that.
Well, and in the 90s especially, and we noticed this when we were going through and watching Stargate again, but at that point in history, science fiction shows, fantasy shows, Lost World, Xena, Hercules, whatever, but also Star Trek and the other, Mutant X, and the syndicated stuff. You had a certain block of actors that showed up in everything, because science fiction was not considered a top shelf, high quality, premier job at that point, because it's still nerds in mom's basement.
Sure.
it wasn't cool to do science fiction in the 90s still.
And that continued
So-
on. I mean, that you look at Stargate.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that you see in Stargate that came from other shows, and there's a lot of people that were in Stargate. I mean, Richard Day Anderson is obvious,
Yeah.
right? Everybody, but there was a lot of them that wound up being in other sci-fi shows. Literally,
Oh yeah. Well,
sci-fi
and
channel shows.
because those actors are willing to do science fiction, so they ended up in everything.
Right.
And I think you're gonna, as we go through this, you're gonna see a lot of that show up, and
Some big name ones too.
some you're gonna remember immediately. You're gonna go, oh, I know this. I know this person. Some might be a little bit more obscure, depending on what roles they've had in the past. Billy Mooney, you may not recognize him at first because he's a grown up
Age.
now. He's an adult.
Yeah.
But this is the kid with the mental powers and I can't even remember the episode name in Twilight Zone. They redid it for the movie where I think you're a bad man and he just stuff disappears. The kid's able to do all sorts of different things with his mind.
I forgot it. I remember reading about that the other day.
But he was the kid. And then of course he goes on for Lost in Space and Will Robinson. So you're going to look at God, that kid, he looks familiar. And it when the light pops on, you have this aha moment. It's like, oh.
I think a lot of it also depends on whether or not they're in heavy makeup or not too.
Yeah.
Because you'll see a lot of names and you're like, oh wow, really? And then you have to go back and but.
See, you guys. Now I'm wishing we were a few episodes ahead because I'll save it.
Right.
Lanier's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah.
But-
Lanier is great, but he plays the obsequious, but you can almost tell he's playing obsequious, or he's kowtowing deliberately.
Yeah, that's I highlighted I highlighted the comment where they said he was they felt he was too obsequious. I didn't think so. I mean, it seems to me like he is obsequious, but he's doing it on purpose because he knows what kind of guy Lando is. So he's trying to, he's playing up to how Lando expects him to be. Right? Yeah. He's not necessarily that.
He's building Lando up.
Yeah, he's kissing his boss's ass.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think. I mean, he is, but again, Veer is kind of a sensitive character for a long time. We'll see more of him, of course, as we go forward. But he's not doing it as an act. He is kowtowing and deferring to his boss, but he's not like some cynical, well, I'm just going to do this, so whatever, Veer has a definite path that he goes on, and this is a good starting point. But in all this, part of this that is also revealed here, to the point of you have these bosses and assistants, and I think it's also good to kind of show, you have the more idealistic younger person in a lot of cases, and then kind of the grizzled veteran, as the ambassador, and that makes for some interesting contrasts. But in this case, we're shown that Lando expresses great frustration because he's demanding an attack essentially, and their counselor, whoever he reports to, just says we're not going to do anything. It shows that how kind of broken they are and weak, that they're like, yeah, we really can't do anything about, or we're not, it's not worth doing anything about it, and even if we did, we would lose, or they'd all be dead anyway.
It's a far-flung colony way out there. It takes too much resources and blah. By the time we got there, they'd already be dead anyways.
Right, and now, part of Lando's issue though is because again he reveals to us that he arranged for his nephew to be in charge of that colony. So now he's also feeling guilty. It's like, he could be dead because of me, kind of thing.
And the irony is he got him that job to keep him out of military confrontations.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, let me see where.
We have another new person in the chat, Loran, who apparently is a big Babylon 5 fan, saying he watched
Awesome.
6 or 7 times. Awesome. Yep.
No, you're ahead of me. Like I said, this is all basically my second watch of this episode, and
I think, I think that I mean, there's part of those are the main reasons for Londo feeling how he is, but he probably feels a little bit, he's been embarrassed a little bit. His race and himself has been embarrassed a bit, and Jakar's going to hold this over him, and
well,
Right.
he's
feels
also
like he's
been
got one on him.
stuck at this pointless mission out at this space station that you know
Right.
he's kind of stuck out of the way. You get the feeling that he knows that they stuck him out there, not thinking that he was going to be able to do any good was going to come of him being out there.
Yeah,
And
and he's spending his time drinking and gambling.
right. Literally that's what he does in every episode I've seen. So
Well, and
Right.
and also consider too, you're on the fifth space station in a place where 3 of them have been sabotaged and destroyed, and the 4th one's disappeared.
Yeah.
How likely are all of these governments, all of the major governments, how likely are they to send their best and brightest, knowing the history of that space?
Yeah.
And anticipating, well, maybe Babylon 5, maybe this 5th one isn't going to last very long either.
right.
Yeah, good point.
And Londo does reach out to Sinclair and tries to get Sinclair to get the backing of the Earth Alliance as well as others.
Yeah,
And
there's a strong push against the Narn. It's like they all kind of want to. It's like, yeah, we got to do something about this aggression.
right.
Sorry, go
And
ahead.
no, I was going to say, and basically, they all think that okay, well, yeah, we should. The Narns are the aggressors here, and then that's when the unfortunate what would you call it? Almost like a hostage video saying, "Oh no, we're great.
Yeah.
Everything here is good. We actually asked them to come because we called the home world and made multiple requests, and we never heard or anything back. So we reached out to the Narn Empire, or what I forget what the
Narn
exact
regime.
word. Narn regime. There we go. And they responded and they came. So we're good. We'll maintain diplomatic relations and social relations, but other than that, we're going to be under the But you could tell he was clearly the actor actually did a pretty good job of portraying that he.
Well, you're right, and you notice he was like looking down, like he was reading it, off of a cue card or something.
You can almost see the gun pointed at his head, like outside of the frame, eh?
Right.
Yeah, but
like I was looking, I'm like, yeah, that's a hostage video. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Didn't Londo say at one point that there was a group that wasn't completely on board? Isn't there a like a fifth column resistance? I might be remembering a different show, different episode. But the Ragesh 3 breaking off, I think, was indicative of other political problems internally. Was that part of that show? I might have been thinking about.
I don't remember
No.
I don't remember
Voyager
mentioning
episode.
it in this episode.
Okay,
No.
that was probably a Voyager episode I watched about the same time. So never mind.
Gee, I wonder.
It all starts to blend together after a while. I'm old.
It's been 30 years, so.
You know what? What you mentioned about this though is clearly the Narn. The Narn had this planned out. This is you can kind of see that it's like, okay, they're moving to enact these plans. This wasn't just some random attack where they raided something. They're expanding and taking back what they see as theirs. This might, if again, this is a political show, so you might have a little bit of a sense that it's like these are the kinds of things happening in the real world today, and were happening, of course, 30 years ago too. It's like, well, this is our land.
Right.
Well, no, it's our land. Well, at what point? Where's your date for your?
I honestly was debating about whether comparing it to places in the Middle East or places even in Eastern Europe, the former Soviet bloc. I think there was a lot of hints that that's kind of that psychology that even today we're seeing very much so. It was what they were trying to not
Well,
exemplify.
given the time period, it probably would have been more of the communist bloc than the
That's
Middle East.
yeah, well, and I said in the last episode that I thought that Londo's people, the Centauri, were very much representative of like this former Soviet Union.
Well, this is an interesting point that we might want to return to many times. Again, in modern entertainment, there's a lot of this, oh, everything is political, blah blah blah, and like I mentioned, this is a very political show, and I don't mean political as in relating to the politics of today. And this will be an excellent example of how you do a show with political themes that you might say, oh, that relates to X, Y, or Z in the real world, without being a screed about the
And
news of today.
Yeah.
and it lets the audience actually draw their own conclusions, just like I did. Very
Right,
much.
exactly, and you're sitting here, you're saying, oh, it reminds me of this, or it reminds me of that.
Well,
But
and
they
the
didn't
other thing
deliberately
too
preach.
is the show itself, the episode itself, the story doesn't take a side. It'll do. It has both perspectives, because
Yeah, and
Jakar has an agenda and Londo has an agenda. The representative governments also have their agendas.
Yeah.
right,
As I have said before, good storytelling, drama if you distill story down, every single character, major or minor, has something that they want, something they need. And the
Right.
drama in the story comes from when those wants and needs come into conflict with each other. And your characters and the politics of your characters, the religion of your characters, the belief system of your characters, the motivations of your characters don't have to be yours. And I think a lot of modern audience writers forget that point. They are so desperate to be represented and to be seen and to whatever, that they self-insert into these stories now, and it didn't used to be that way. Straczynski is writing a story about these characters, and Londo has an agenda, Jakar has an agenda, and it could very well be that Straczynski doesn't agree with either one of them.
right,
But for the purpose of the story and the internal logic of the story, and I've said before, if you're going to tell a political story, that's fine. It has to be the politics within that universe.
Right.
Star Wars is a political story in a sense, because you have the fall of the Republic, the rise of the Empire. That's a political story. You have the politics of that story, but it's internal logic in the universe. It has to make sense for that kind of story that you're wanting to tell. It can't, you could do it as an allegory for modern day, whatever. And you can still, and it's in the fact that we're still able to see examples today of things that would match this. It tells you how well this holds up all of these years later.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you could see in the chat here, and already with us, people are like, oh, I like Jakar. The story as it is. Like for me, Jakar is very aggressive. He's not a character that I really relate to at this point in the story. But other people are like, yeah, Jakar's my guy, and
Sure.
Snob and I were talking before, it's like, he was kind of defending Jakar's position, and based on what Jason had discussed in the last episode.
I see him as a snake. He's kind of,
Yeah.
and I think they kind of, the makeup, I think, even kind of helps build that perspective.
Right.
The beady eyes and the kind of scaly skin, and
I see them all as snakes. Londo is just as sneaky as Jakar, in a different way.
Yes.
And my sense is that Londo is actually better at it, because I think he's been doing it longer. Because I think that the political background of his race,
house.
they're falling. Yeah, his house. They're their society is on the decline. You've got to be more sneaky, and he's just grown up in that. He's actually sneakier than Jakar is.
Yeah. Well, there is a
per-
point
from a personal
that-
perspective, right?
Yeah, there is a point where Jakar runs across Sinclair, who's in the, I don't know if it's a greenhouse, arboretum, the growing
Mhm.
area.
Yeah.
I forget what they actually
Yeah,
call it.
Arboretum, I think.
Arboretum. Thank you. I was trying to find the word when I was writing it down here. And one of the things that Jakar, kind of in that underhandedness, points out, he's of course trying to bend Sinclair's will on what the Earth Alliance position is going to be on this, and he points
Mhm.
out that the Narn supplied Earth with weapons for the war
Against the Minbari.
against the Minbari, and he actually he says, "You owe us," and Sinclair comes back. He retorts with, you know, the line that the Narn will sell to anyone who has the credits, and points out that the Narn are very much the kind of people that would do a sneak attack, an underhanded stab you in the back and unexpectedly unprovoked type of thing, and points out it. And here's a tie-in to maybe the real world, but he says, that humanity is become accustomed to that, Pearl Harbor, and then he points out the nuking of San Diego apparently was a terrorist
Yeah,
attack.
bearing in mind this was before 9/11.
Right. We're talking 94,
Yep.
and it was probably made in 93. So it was and he literally says terrorist nuking of San Diego, and then of course talks about the destruction of the first Mars colony. So
Yeah.
And there's things in there that might be threads that are made come about, but basically the Earth Alliance bought their weapons from the Narn, and so Jakar seems to think that we owe the Narn because of that, and I could see that kind of implication.
Yeah. Well, and that Jakar tries to kind of cozy up to Sinclair here again, but it ends. Sinclair kind of insults him, and Jakar says, "I'd have you skinned alive," if this was a different situation. So, I mean, it turns out this is like the second episode in a row now where Sinclair and Jakar are really butting heads. Like I said, Jakar is the antagonist on the station at this point, from my perspective. RTBS brings up about Sinclair's comment about Jakar's dream. Jakar's dream was that the Centauri are all slaughtered and their bones are made into flutes for Narn children.
Yeah, or was it
that's
or
pleasant.
something?
Yeah, they're hardcore. This is not for a modern audience.
They literally don't view each other as sentient equals. They despise one another quite a bit.
The Narn strike me as a very opportunistic race. Like they would supply weapons to whoever could buy them, and they're quite happy to get involved in anything and maybe use it to their advantage.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
How much are the Narns? How much do you think the Narns are the Russia analog in this? Because remember too, this was made after the wall fell, the Soviet Union is collapsing, and their economy is in the tank. It almost feels like, because the Russians were in a place where they would probably economically have to do something similar. Maybe not necessarily with weapons, but
I'm thinking maybe more like, I don't know, a particular country that currently is in conflict with Russia.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's more like the Narn, might be what the Narns are, and the former Soviet bloc countries, they've got all these nuclear weapons that are left over from when the Soviet Union was strong, and they've all broken apart, and now they're kind of like, hey, we'll sell these to whoever. And
yeah, but that's modern day equivalent. I'm thinking it at the time.
No, I'm thinking in '90s.
Well,
the
well,
former Soviet
yeah,
bloc
that's a good point.
nations.
That's
See,
yeah,
They
I would if we
because
were going.
they were conquered by Russia, by the Russian Revolution. They
yeah.
were independent countries before the Bolshevik Revolution. So
So you're saying that Russia is like the Centauri on the decline, and
right.
the Narn would be one of the former Russian republics, or
Yeah.
them in general.
Or even some of the Middle Eastern countries that may have been aligned with the Soviet Union, or so any of those could be an analog. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
How about Afghanistan? Old Russia versus Afghanistan.
sure,
If you wanted to draw that comparison,
yeah,
they were kind of less technologically advanced to begin with, and then they end up getting a lot of weapons, becoming weapons dealers, selling
Mhm.
drugs, doing nefarious things, funding these other like, well,
which
again, I'm not.
which is actually you're leading right up to what comes out on that other plot line
Sure.
with Sinclair, where they actually go in and to where this ship with all of the refugees is supposed to come, and instead of Garibaldi going out, Sinclair takes his place and actually goes out there. Sinclair, of course, mentions that his grandfather was a pilot, and going all the way back to the Battle of the Bulge, they were
Battle
fighter
of Britain.
pilots.
Battle of Britain.
Battle of Britain. They were fighter pilots. So he's got his background now. Of course, he comes from a long line of fighter pilots. But they go out and these raiders are attacking the ship, and of course they engage and they start scattering off, and they decide to go off one particular way. These raiders do, and I believe Sinclair's asked if should we pursue them, and see, and he's like no, and he orders part of the squadron to take up positions around the ship in escort, to escort this ship the rest of the way back to Babylon 5, and he and I want to say Delta 7, and maybe a couple others go off in the opposite direction of the way that the Raiders, having that maybe playing into that whole instinct of that from his line. And sure enough, what do they discover? A command ship.
Mm-hmm.
And they they overpower the command ship. Obviously, they've got better weapons than the command ship has on it, and they discover something on board. You wanna answer
No,
that?
go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
okay. Turns out there's a Narn on board this command ship, and Narn being these weapons dealers, well, you always got to have somebody that shows people how to use these great weapons. I think we even saw that back in Fifth Element. You've got the guy who's got to show them how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they take him into custody and bring him back to the ship. And when they confront Jakar, not only did they discover that this Narn was on board that was supplying the raiders with these heavy weapons, but there was also recording crystals from the communications, clearly showing that the whole thing was planned out by the Narn to attack, and that the whole hostage video or hostage, oh no, we're great, we asked for this, that whatever you want to call it, was actually staged. And of course, at that point, he gives Jakar, and this is why I think Jakar absolutely knew. He says, "Here's the option. You either get all of your troops off of Regesh 3 and leave, let them be back where they were, or the council is going to have to go ahead and vote."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of diplomatic knife fighting in this show. It's like,
Oh yeah.
it's just like, it's leverage. You do this or I'm going to do this kind of thing. which is kind of a refreshing bit of blunt realism. It's like, yeah, we could talk all we want, but when it comes down to it, it's leverage I have over you.
Yeah, and there was another politician that was introduced. A senator was introduced, and
It's the same one from the pilot, though, wasn't it?
was the senator in the pilot?
Yeah, he was in the pilot.
Was
He had a communication with Sinclair when he took command of the station.
At the very beginning, yeah. So that I think they're establishing that this may be Sinclair's point of contact for most of the functions. Yeah, you've got the presidential election, of course, and that's mentioned in there. But I found it interesting, the line that the Earth Alliance can't be the galactic police or the galaxy's police, and that's we've heard that type of thinking before, that the U.S. can't be the world police. So
this is the aspect of the show that I really enjoy. The which really comes out is the strength in the writing, where they're quite strong with the back and forth between the political ambassadors, and it really demonstrates that they've got an overall vision for what's going on, and they put the time and effort into the writing.
Yeah. Quick side note: RTBS brings up about the Star Fury, where we see the fighters. Their fighters are called Star Furies in action, and it is a semi-realistic sort of ship in that it's basically, it doesn't fly like an airplane, it flies like a spaceship,
Right.
meaning like it's moving and then they flip around, but continuing to move in the direction they were going, so they can like turn around and fire at something that was behind them as they continue progressing now backwards. They use that several times, or I should say, the Star Furies are portrayed, throughout the show, and it is a good point that he brings up there.
You know what they remind me of? They remind me of The Last Starfighter. I wonder why,
Yeah,
Jason.
a little bit.
Very much the same style, and
What's this 3D model in the folder here?
Yeah, right. But I do like the maneuverability with the the four thrust, where they could just flip the thrusters and literally rotate 360, while, as you said, they're still their regular motion is still going on, and they can sit there and spin around, and something that is done. You do see that in the combat quite a bit.
What do you think about the comment about Sinclair being willing to bend the rules?
Yeah, and play hardball.
Yeah, I think that refers to telling or not telling the the story about what happened with the Narn supplying the weapons.
Well, he told, Sinclair says, I never saw you. Last we knew, we were voting for sanctions, and that was, of course, before it came out that yes, indeed,
right. Yeah, this is not the goody rule following Federation,
or captain or commander, if you will, in this case. Yeah, he's willing to do what, and maybe that's more indicative of a true combat veteran, that was on the line.
I think the other thing too, though, it does bear a similarity to Cisco's position on Deep Space Nine, and I we keep it's going to keep coming up comparing these two shows because they're so similar in concept. But it's not necessarily the fact that Sinclair's a good leader as much as the whole willing to bend the rules and play hardball and all of that. When you stop and consider both of these shows like the Western on the frontier, and the commander of the station is the new sheriff,
right,
then it works a whole lot better because they're isolated in this town. They might have, they might have access to the train, and the sheriff is the one that's basically got to set the rules. And circumstances being what they are, okay, I'm gonna look the other way this time, but you better behave yourself, because next time I'll shoot you in the face.
Right.
And they have to be willing to bend a little bit in those circumstances to kind of make sure that we keep the peace, because later on it's going to blow up on them. So
Well,
I can see Sinclair easily being willing to bend the rules in order to make things continue to go relatively smoothly. We're not going to have a diplomatic incident.
yeah, and you have two instances of this where you've got the leader character who kind of brings their second on board with it, with Sinclair and Ivanova, where he's like, and she's like, yep, got it. I'm working for you, and we're on the ground here. This is a field operation, not some whatever the politicians think not important. And the same
Yep.
thing with Londo and Veer, where he's like, you're not telling him anything, and he's like, we're gonna get Veer kind of is like, oh, are we gonna get in trouble? He's like, I don't care,
Yeah.
and so again, it's kind of this like I said, knife fight, thing. It's like, this is where the real stuff's happening here. This is not some on paper theory in some university, which I like. I like.
Yeah, it's not a clean universe. It's lived in. It's very much the opposite of the way things like happened in Next Generation, where we've risen above that and blah blah blah, and there is no poverty and no hunger, and well, clearly there's a bunch of poverty, hunger, and rampant drugs
Crime
and this and that, crime, you name it.
yeah, on the station, in this kind of controlled environment, you still have
But
this kind of stuff.
even on Earth, I mean,
Right.
from what you're hearing, there's a fierce political battle that's going on, with very different opposing ways that they want to interact. One of them, I think, wants to be more isolationist, and one of them wants to be more, and so they're definitely building all kinds of things without making necessarily pushing anybody. Like we said, they're not pushing you; they're just exposing you to situations that you go, I see stuff like that, or I saw stuff like that, or
Yeah. One other thing I did want to mention, I don't think we mentioned it, was that the League of Non-Aligned Worlds is mentioned here in regards to the meeting, where I don't think we actually see them.
Yeah, we
or
do.
do we? Do we?
Yes,
Okay,
we
they
do
are
in
in the
the
they're in
council,
there.
in the emergency council. I think that's the first time we've seen them too.
Okay, so this is there's all these other alien races, and basically they're the minor races, if you want to think of it that way. That they kind of form a coalition, these smaller groups. And do they have one vote, or it's only for ties or something like that? It's like they're definitely a weaker partner, um, versus the main races.
Yeah, I mean, you can almost see that as kind of like the UN, where you've got the UN Security Council, and
Yeah, that's true. You have Security
you-
Council and then everybody else.
Yeah, that's how I see it.
yeah. In the League of Non-Aligned, the unaligned, non-aligned nations would be all the other countries that aren't part of the Security Council. So, although there's not that many of them compared to, I think there's
Yep.
maybe a half a dozen that you see or so.
Well, Weatherman says over 35 minor races in the lore.
Right, but there was not 35 people in that
in
that room. There were not 35 characters that you saw. So, but I could, yeah.
Spoiler, my favorite, Drazi. Just want to throw that out there for later.
All right, I think we're just over the hour mark. We'll just start to sum up here. Last thoughts on this episode. Death, then Jason, and then Cam.
I thought it was a really good episode. They introduced a few new characters. They still haven't explained on what happened to all of them. We don't know why these people are there, but there is a point at which it said, "Oh, that's right, you're new." Well, let me tell you. And I don't think they, unlike with the pilot, where literally they're trying to scattershot everything at you all at once. They were careful, and you only got a couple of new ones that you're getting introduced to at this time. So I think maybe they're slowing the pace down for introducing these new regulars that you're seeing. So I liked it. I think Jason and I would probably agree this was maybe cleaner in deliverance, and it's a little bit shorter, obviously, than the pilot. I think it was like what 38 minutes, 40 minutes, 44 minutes, something like that. So, you know, but I did one of the interesting things that I did note. You see the classic 1990s intro where you start off 3 minutes into the show, it cuts to the intro, and then a minute and a half is the intro, the whole title script where you see all the characters and stuff. You don't see that anymore.
No.
And it was literally 1 minute and 30 seconds for that whole sequence of the intro. So
And when you have something like that, like a 5-act structure in a typical television script, or even a 7-act structure, some of them do. You have what's called the teaser. You have that
Mhm.
little scene at the very beginning that kind of hooks you in and establishes this is what the story's going to be before you go to the title sequence.
yeah,
And yeah, that's right. You don't get title sequences like that anymore. There should be. I mean, we've got one. Well, it's Strange New Worlds has one,
yeah,
but it's a throwback. It's a deliberately retro type of show because of what they're trying to do with it. But most shows, you don't get a title sequence anymore. You're just right into things, and you get to the first commercial break, and you just keep rolling through.
yeah.
I
Then you've got the names appearing while the story's going on, and you're
Yeah,
like, what?
yeah, yeah, and we need to bring that back. I think we need to bring back proper title sequences, because nowadays you don't have any place in shows where you get the episode title. Back in the day, you had the title sequence for the show, and then when you get into the first act, you have the title of the episode.
Right.
You know, and like The Gathering, and it's missing now, and I think we need to go back to 22 episodes in a season.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I miss having it 20. What was it? 20 to 26, right? Wasn't that pretty much the
Depends on
standard?
the show. Yeah,
Yeah.
the average was 22.
Right.
But yeah, I think we missed something now doing it with kind of a modified British model.
Yeah.
You do the 8 to 10, 12 episodes, and then you wait 3 years, and then you come up with another eight episodes. That's not a sustainable model for building an audience for any kind of show.
No, because
Uh,
it's over by the time you're like, okay, oh,
yeah, yeah, you get into it and you're like, oh, that's it. I mean, we're going to talk Skeleton Crew tomorrow. It's the same kind of thing. It's 8 episodes, and it does what it does what it needed to do, but it's too short.
yeah. And I have not seen the finale of Skeleton Crew yet.
All right, I won't talk about it because that's not the show anyway. But a proper 22 episode season. It starts in September and it runs through May, and you have your
Mid-season break.
sweeps. You get a mid-season break. You get sweeps months, November and May, and then you have your cliffhanger finale going into the summer. And you sit there and go, is that it? Where's the rest of it? You mean I have to wait 3 months? I mean,
Or a year.
I'm perfectly
Yeah.
fine waiting 3 months instead of 3 years
Right.
for the
Right.
next season. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's what I think. What do you think, Jason?
It's a good reset as a first episode, because there's enough that's similar to the pilot episode. It's connected. It's the same show.
Right.
There's the casting changes. It's very similar to the original Star Trek, because you have your pilot Where No Man Has Gone Before, and then you have your official first episode that's completely different costume wise and cast and all of that. So it's not atypical for the first official episode to be a little bit different from the pilot movie. I think the uniforms are sharper. I think there's a little bit. It looks like they took a little bit more care in how it looks, because now it's a weekly episode thing, and people are going to start actually scrutinizing and looking at it. And from the story standpoint, it does start to establish a lot of things that start threading through as we go through the next few seasons, and things start to develop between all of these characters. You have some of those seeds that are already planted here, and as all of this is swirling around, these characters are already pretty solid dimensional characters. You don't have anybody really that comes across as being just a flat two-dimensional character that's only got one property, one attribute, one characteristic. They're relatively fully formed, which is a good thing, because a lot of times you start these first seasons of these shows and you're still trying to figure out who these characters are.
Tasha, Data.
Tasha's the biggest one.
Yep.
But yeah, Data's another. And it's kind of funny. Everybody makes a big deal about Data not using contractions all through this time. He uses them in the pilot in Encounter in Farpoint. He uses contractions when he's talking to McCoy. I saw that the other day. I was like, wait a minute, hang on.
Yeah. Maybe that was something that was kind of, we should probably push towards this, and nobody remembered it.
And again, that's one of those things where, as we're going through, things change and things settle in, and you figure out what your routine is and who these characters are. But and Straczynski writing all of it himself helps with that, because he already knows where he's going with this stuff. He knows what his plan is for the season, for the episodes, and all that. So you can do more of that, as opposed to, you've got your showrunner, you've got your 4 or 5, 6 writers, and you have and remember, this is at a time also when Star Trek was doing it. I don't think Babylon 5 was doing it, where you could have outsiders pitch stories for the show. Star Trek did it. Babylon 5 did it because Straczynski had it already mapped out. But some shows you could do that, and the fact that Straczynski has it all planned, he's able to start putting things in the beginning, because he knows where it's going. 10 episodes out, 15 episodes out, 2 seasons out, and I think that helps solidify, make this a more solid first episode than you would normally get for a show just starting out.
I think that you're right, you're dead on about these characters are all fully formed. They may still have a little bit of roughness around the edges, and the actors haven't quite fleshed out all the nuances, but for the most part, they're not flat wooden. One example that comes to mind, that you don't see, or isn't mentioned until season 5, the doctor. There is no doctor present in this episode, even though the new doctor is in the opening sequence. But that was one of the things that stood out about him in the pilot, is that the guy that played the doctor seemed very, very much like wooden and not quite fully, not even, he was stiff, I guess is the word I'm looking for, and not quite there. He's not present in this episode at all, and neither is his replacement. So
we'll get to that next week.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of times you can tell when you have a vital character and a functional character. where you have a character that is only there just to perform a function to get us from point A to point B in the story, and they don't have any other importance other than that, as opposed to your regular cast of characters who have to adapt and adjust and shift based on the needs of the story. And in order to do that, you've got to have an understanding of who these characters are, what their histories are, what their relationships are, and how that comes into play in whatever narrative you're trying to tell. Your NPCs, not so much. And I think you can really tell when a character is the NPC and when he's a essential part of the ensemble. And the
Right.
ensemble keeps getting bigger.
Oh yeah. Gotta love it. Cam.
Yeah.
Damn, last night.
Okay, I thought that this was a pretty, for me, a stark contrast between the pilot and this episode, where again, I'm forgiving of pilots for a lot of the reasons you guys mentioned. It's like if you've ever done something for the first time, you learn a ton from it, and then it's like if you were to do it again, it would be a significant step up just because of the experience. And that's what I think this episode does. I think there's a lot that's really presented in this episode, and you'll see that as you go forward. And I think it handles it pretty well, of throwing those threads out there in a credible way without really needing to run them all to ground. So I think it really does that well. Just one little bit I wanted to mention is the last scene with Garibaldi and
Oh,
Delenn.
I was gonna save on that one. It's on my list.
Yeah, Garibaldi is kind of at some point he's like hitting on Talia, or so
My
it seems.
favorite
He's like,
thing.
"Oh, come by my quarters. I'll show you my favorite thing." He's like, "Oh, my second
Oh, I
favorite."
mean my second favorite thing.
And then at the end, you see what this is, and it's him. And somehow he's roped Delenn into this, into coming to his quarters where he's watching old Warner Brothers cartoons. And he's cracking up and
Duck
they're eating popcorn or
Dodgers.
whatever. And it's just Delenn is the one that kills me, because she's just kind of like, she's like holding like a single piece of popcorn, like kind of looking at it, like not sure what to do with it. And it was just kind of a lighthearted little bit, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, and the very tail scene, of course. The very end scene. After that, it cuts over to Sinclair. He goes in. He's taking off his little wrist communicator thing, and the TV is on, and you notice that Santiago won the election, so they're kind of wrapping up that little bit. And he tells the TV to go away, and I don't know what they call it, but he just tells it to go down, and he tells it to turns the lights down, and next thing you know, you get the little thing go off. It says, "Commander, there's a problem."
Yeah, no rest.
It's almost like the last episode of Hill Street Blues, when it's you're at the very end of the episode, and a lot of people were speculating how they were going to end that show, because it was very, very serialized. You had one go to the next, go to the next, go to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And the end of Hill Street Blues, it's just business as usual. They're continuing on as if they've got another half a dozen episodes to go, and it just fades out on the precinct doing what they do, which
Life
is
goes on.
the only way that you could have ended that show. But it kind of reminded me of this one, where it's one of these things, it never ends. It's just the next thing that's going to come up, and so we go away, but the business of the space station just keeps going, and we're going to pick back up with it in the next one.
Gives you
Yeah,
that perpetuity.
it gives you a sense that it's a world that's happening, not just when you're watching it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Snob, what do you think?
No, I mean, I think you guys made all great points. I agree.
How's your voice
It's a good.
holding up?
Okay, I've been drugging myself. It's actually. And remember, I saw this episode before I saw The Gathering, because I didn't have access to that at the time.
Yeah.
And it seems like a good pilot episode to me. I'm surprised how well it does with the job. So yeah, I mean, it's good. All right, let's go to our trivia, and we'll end off the show. All right, here we go. Babylon 5 trivia questions. So write your names or write your answers to the questions in the chat, or sorry, not in the chat, in the comments of the show afterwards, and be ready to, next show to put them on there. All right, so I'm going to read them over real quick. Question number 1. With which alien civilization did humans make first contact officially? Now, this is official, not the true first contact, but officially. What Centauri holding is attacked by the Narns in this episode? That should be pretty easy. What is the name of Londo's nephew that was the governor of the colony attacked by the Narns? Who does Ivanov have a rude confrontation with in the CNC? And what recurring troublemakers make their first appearance in this episode?
Answers in the comments, please.
Yes.
Yeah, after the show, and we'll go over the answers next episode. And no cheating. If you cheat, you're only cheating yourself. If you go and look them up on the internet. Yeah.
RTBS later answer in the comments, not the chat, please.
Yeah.
So your record will be there for all time.
Yes.
For everyone to see and know how smart you are. Yep. And you can hold it over everyone's head.
Yep.
All right. Okay, and that's it for the show. Any last anything else last minute before we head out, gentlemen?
Just noting
Jason?
that. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is a little housekeeping end here. This is a weekly show. We will be doing this every Wednesday, unless something catastrophic happens, at the same time. So please come back. I appreciate everyone who is here in the chat and who's been sharing links and things. We're excited about doing this, and we're going to be doing it for quite a while. So share it with your friends.
4 pages may have been a little too much.
Yeah, this is 111
I literally
episodes. There's 111 episodes in the all of Babylon 5, and we've just done the second one, so we've got 109 to go.
All right,
Jason.
Looking forward to it.
Not really last thoughts. I mean, just I'll plug tomorrow. We're going to be talking to the Skeleton Crew on tomorrow's Live from the Bunker. Cameron Pasha will be here. We'll talk about rumors and reports about animated shows that are in development there. So that's tomorrow. But yeah, this is going to be fun talking Babylon 5 every week, assuming I can make it on time.
That's all right. I'm enjoying it too. So Cameron's going to be on tomorrow. Then I'm going to try to make the show if I'm not sleeping again, like I slept yesterday and most of today.
Yep.
Cameron's he's doing okay.
Yeah, he's back home. The evacuation order he was specifically under has been lifted. So
and obviously he
wasn't
able
to get back home. So
yeah, he wasn't in a place that was hit. Obviously,
no, it was close. But he managed to get out, and then he got back in yesterday, day before yesterday. So it's still, everything is still kind of chaotic out there. But
so noon tomorrow for Live from the Bunker. And I guess we should mention Top Lofty Lounge on Sunday is still going on. So Snob has 2 shows going on now that he enslaves me to do.
That's right. And Michael makes a good. Are we going to do other movies in the spin-off Crusade, the other B5 stuff? We're gonna focus on getting season 1 done, and then we'll see how it goes. We have some ideas about maybe taking a little break after season 1 and doing some, maybe trying to interview with some of the cast members who are around, or J. Michael Straczynski, excuse me, something like that. We're going to play with it a little bit, but right now we're going to focus on the season and see how that goes, and then go from there. But yeah, that's a possibility.
I think it's fun. This is fun.
All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Great show. Glad you were here. Appreciate you coming by. And we will see you next Wednesday, I hope.
See you, everybody.
Good night.
All right. Bye.